Good morning. It is a lovely morning here. When I went out to walk, it was 56 degrees and it felt pretty good. Um, we're in the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 19, and we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. Pilate has been judging Jesus. Jesus has been before Pilate. Uh, Pilate is trying to let him go, but he's weak. And he fears he don't want to lose his own skin. He's got himself boxed into a corner. We're going to examine that again this morning. Let's just pick up where we left off yesterday. So that beginning of verse 12, and from thenceforth Pilate sought to release Jesus, but the Jews cried out, saying, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. And when Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat, in a place that is called the Pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said unto the Jews, Behold, your king. He was being a little sarcastic. I think he was grasping at straws, too. That if enough of them thought maybe Jesus was or could be their king, maybe they wouldn't crucify him, but he knew better. Picking up in verse 15, after behold your king. But they cried out, the crowd, they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate is still trying to ram it back down their throat, make them realize that this is all wrong. Even though he understands even now his hands are tied in the matter. The only way he could have escaped this was to not hear Jesus' case in the first place, and we'll look at that in a minute. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered, We have no king but Caesar. And, Pilate knows that this is not true because the Jews did not recognize Caesar. They only recognized God. And they just did whatever they had to do to keep the Romans from shutting down the temple and killing them. But they did not regard Caesar as their king. As a matter of fact, Josephus and some of the other historians have pointed out that, and Jewish tradition, that during the reign of either Pilate or the procurator before him, they were able to remove the pictures of Caesar, the big discs, that had his likeness on them, like these big shields. They were able to remove them from the temple grounds, which was a big deal because the Romans didn't allow that to go on anywhere else. Their argument was that Caesar is not our king, only God is our king. We answer only to God. And for a long time, probably from not long after the death of Herod until Pilate, as long as the tax collection kept up, as long as there weren't Jews trying to overthrow the government, they were fine. Now, anybody who did try to overthrow the Romans was severely dealt with, punished, killed. Matter of fact, Barabbas was in jail for being an insurrectionist. But like a lot of the rebel parties, like especially the Zealots and some of those people, they were not only against the Romans, they were against Herod, and they were King Herod and the Herodians, and they were also against the ruling class in the temple. When they wanted to overthrow everything, excuse me, I think when I was walking, I may have got a spider web in my hair. It was tickling me. They were just as much against King Herod's administration and the ruling class at the temple, the chief priest, the high priest and his family, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the scribes, the lawyers, all that, the ruling class and all the rich people that propped them up. The Zealots were just as much against that as they were against Rome. So this insurrection went on, and when they said they have no king but Caesar, they were lying. They wanted to be on the public of record of declaring their love for Caesar, and then make it even harder for Pilate to back out of this deal. Verse 16, then delivered Pilate Jesus, therefore, unto them to be crucified. And they took Jesus and led him away. And of course, in Matthew, we have the famous account of Pilate washing his hands of the matter. And when Pilate, verse 24, Matthew 27, and when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I'm innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. But just washing his hands didn't remove his guilt, because he's the one who condemned him to death. And like we've been talking about for several days, Pilate did this because he was weak. He knew he let the Jewish leaders box him into a corner from which there was no escape. They painted him into a corner, and there wasn't no back door, there wasn't no window. He couldn't get out. He was trapped. I don't believe Pilate wanted to kill Jesus. I see too many steps where he's trying to get Jesus off the cross and keep him off the cross, because he knows that the priests are lying, and he knows that Jesus hadn't done anything worthy of death, and he knows Jesus is innocent. Oh, he may have been guilty of breaking some law of the Jews, but nothing that Roman law would convict him of. But when it got down to the point where they said, hey, this guy declares himself a king, that's insurrection. If you side with him, Caesar's going to find out about it, and you'll have to fall on your sword if somebody doesn't come here and assassinate you. So, as a practical matter, there wasn't anything else he could do, except he could have given up his own life for Jesus. But, these things were planned from the beginning. Peter said that Jesus was crucified with the foreknowledge of God. I mean, this was all planned out. If it hadn't been Pilate, it would have been somebody else, because the plan of God was going to be carried out. And there wasn't going to be any getting away from it. There wasn't going to be any way out. I'm looking for the exact passage here. That if the only way that Pilate could have got out of this, other than sacrificing himself, if he would have tried to get out of it, then that would have been by not hearing the case in the first place. He could have said that hey, has he committed murder? No. Has he harmed a Roman citizen? No. Has he committed an act of insurrection? Is he leading a rebellion? No. then I don't have anything to do with you Jews. So that's a hard thing to do. See, he could have, hindsight is 2020. I'm looking at something here. Hindsight is 2020, and we're looking back. Uh, Looking back, it's easy to say what you should have done or what somebody else should have done. There's a verse in here where it says Pilate would have let him go, but you sought his death. You know, I will look this up. I don't have it at my fingertips. I remember the verse. If Jesus, and I'll try to tell you tomorrow, that one verse, just trust me, Pilate would have let him go, but now he was in a box. The only way for him to have avoided this position that he was in, where he had to give Jesus up to be crucified, because his authority and his loyalty, not only his authority, his loyalty to Rome was challenged. If they would have brought Jesus to him and he would have said, has he killed anybody? Has he murdered anybody? Has he attacked a Roman? Has he stopped the tax collections? Has he done something that would be an offense to Rome? Then Pilate could have heard him and crucified him, but Pilate should have said, this case is not in my jurisdiction. He has done nothing to Rome. He has done nothing according to Roman law to be guilty of death. And he would have let him go. I will have that to you. I may add this in the notes when I look up the verse. I won't waste any more time with it now. I just can't call it to mind. We have no king but Caesar, the chief priest cried. And Pilate had to admit, okay, neither do I. You know, I'm going to let Jesus die so that I don't have to fall on my sword. If Pilate would have been more cautious, then Jesus might not have died and he wouldn't have had to fall on his sword this time. But see, this was all done by the predeterminate counsel of God. God decided what was going to happen. He caused everything to happen. It was always plan A. If it hadn't been Pilate, it would have been somebody else. Jesus was going up on the old rugged cross. That was plan one from the beginning. I was just trying to get into Pilate's head here because I know that you've wondered about that, as everybody else has. Then he delivered Jesus, therefore, to them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth unto a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified him, and two other with him, on either side one, and Jesus in the midst. Remember the prophecy, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross. The writing was Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The title then read, Many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city. And it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. And said the chief priests of the Jews to Pilate, Write not the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am the King of the Jews, which he never said. They asked him if he was the Son of God, and he said, I am. They called him the King of the Jews. But then he told Pilate as he was coming into town, Hosanna, Hosanna. Blessed is he that cometh, the Son of David, he that cometh in the name of the Lord. even grilled Pilate, remember, he says, art thou a king? Jesus said, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus said, did somebody else tell you this, or did you think it up on your own, or did it come of yourself? And he says, well, am I a Jew? I don't know. I'm just going on what they told me. And Jesus said he was a king, but his kingdom was not from hence. The thing is he is king of the Jews. He was king of the Jews. He was rejected. The king was rejected. Uh, and God always knew he would be rejected. It was the plan from the beginning. You see, the crucifixion is not plan B. It's plan A. He was slain from the foundation of the world. Right, not the king of the Jews, but that he said, I am the king of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I've written. I said, I've said what I think. You said what you think. Now I've said what I think. And what I say went up on the cross. I'm sorry that I couldn't pull that verse up. I will put it in the notes. I'll put it in a comment. God bless you. Talk to you tomorrow.